welcome to... What's the name of the show?
Dubious Intellectual Yabbering.
Welcome to Dubious Intellectual Yabbering. My name is... Ian and...
Iskander.
Iskander.
It says with a Y.
No, it doesn't. And this is Danny over there. Welcome.
Hello.
How's it going?
Pretty good week. Finished some books here and there.
Anything good?
Yeah, I just finished one called Kokoro by Natsume Soseki. Have you guys heard of him?
No.
Oh, he's supposed to be like the best novelist in the all of the history of Japan or something.
Alright, did you read it in Japanese or English?
Yeah, my Japanese not that good, so I read the English translation.
Even bigger than Osamu?
Hmm?
Even bigger than Osamu?
I think so, yeah.
What else did the guy write?
So Kokoro, which means heart, was his biggest work.
Mm-hmm.
And then other famous ones are I Am a Cat, which is
wait, I do know the guy. I read
yeah, he's
he
influenced Murakami, I think, which is why Murakami is obsessed with cats.
Mm.
And then there's also I Am Bachan. That's the only three I remember, but there's other ones too.
Did I get you I Am a Cat?
Mm.
And you didn't like it?
I did like it. I think I stopped reading it just because the satire of the society that he was presenting in I Am a Cat made me feel cynical about society, so I stopped reading it.
Oh. So you would recommend it?
Yeah, in a way. I think it's entertaining. I just think that,
It'll make you want to leave society?
yeah, it'll make you kind of sad about the foibles and the foolhardiness of human beings. There's a lot of useless posturing that happens in that book.
Much like real life.
Mm.
So what have you guys been up to?
Finishing all my assignments before I get to be on spring break, which I now am.
Nothing much. I'm playing some video games.
Mm-hmm.
Just living my life.
Do you read less now, Ian? I feel like.
Probably a little bit. Although I started a new book this week. I forgot the author. I think the book
Margaret something.
No, Margaret something. She's a historian. The book is The War That Ended Peace, about the origins of World War I. Pretty good so far.
Mm.
Really tough for me to read, though. It's kind of sad, you know? Just all this senseless dying. And the whole book, I know it's coming. I know World War I is coming, right? That is a fact. It's history, right? And it's a history book. And it's just examining how, in a world where vast numbers of people did not want to go to war, and even people in positions of power did not want to go to war, somehow war happened anyway. And that's kind of a sad thing to think about. So...
That's why I could never read historical fiction as a child.
Well, this is not fiction.
I knew.
All right. What do you guys want to talk about today?
Do you think that life is inevitable? Or the course of one's life is inevitable?
Well, I don't really understand the question that much.
Yeah, I feel like you're trying to rephrase the history is history is not inevitable and just.
Do you think that I guess, do you believe in determinism or free will? Is the more termy way of putting that question.
Okay, what do you mean by free will?
Do you think that when you're born, the trajectory and outcome of your life is set? Or do you think that it is not set and you can make it into whatever you want it to be?
I mean, I don't really believe that like there are certain like specific events in the future that are like predestined or like that are like inevitable. But I feel like based on like the person, because like so everyone like starts as children, but eventually like you grow up a certain way and you have like your habits and your like routines, your like your clocks or whatever. So like you have like a certain like mode of operation and like no matter how you have like some degree of free will, I guess, to change. But like maybe you don't even see a reason to change, and those could be like factors that like drive like people in a certain way, right? So it's like the possibility of your future life grows like more limited as you grow up and have more experiences.
Determinism is wrong. People have free will. Full stop.
Do people have illusion of free will, or do people actually have free will?
They actually have free will.
What makes you say that?
All right. So, you guys are both more physicist-y than I am. It's my first posit. So, please correct me if I'm wrong. 2. The physics of the world operates in some element of randomness, correct? At the quantum level, there is observable randomness. Therefore, you can't really say that everything is set in stone from the beginning because there is observable randomness. Second, the double slit experiment, right? In my mind, basically proves that we're living in a simulation, right? And as we are living in a simulation, the only, like, if we're living in a simulation, we think about simulations that we create, the only data that is actually created momentarily is data that needs to be observed, right? Before that, the data is stored in a quantum state, which I imagine is a lot easier for whoever is running this universe to store. Therefore, I think that our actions change things in the simulation. Also, who the hell would run a simulation if they already knew it was going to happen? Doesn't make sense. So, there you go.
I buy it.
Okay. I think I want to respond to your radical theory, Ian. I feel like even though I study like physics, I've never been able to kind of like solve the idea of like free will in my head. Just because like the thing with randomness is like I feel like it's like a good enough argument to like defeat determinism, because you can show that like you don't have all the information in the current state to predict everything that'll happen in the future.
But human beings also don't live on the quantum level.
Right. But like the issue is like quantum like mechanics itself is just like related to like randomness of like outcomes. Whereas when people talk about free will, they're talking about like there's some entity called like them like related to themselves that are actively making decisions. So if like I have free will to choose left every time, like that's not even that random, but I would still have free will if I actually or hypothetically if I count as free will if I just chose to act in a non-random way, right?
I buy what Danny's saying.
Are you trying to say that there is randomness, but the randomness does not mean that we are controlling the randomness? The randomness means that the randomness exists and therefore it is not determined.
Yeah, like I don't think I can say that we're controlling the randomness. Like, cause like to me, free will doesn't really make sense. Cause yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say, but like if you think about it, like your experience of consciousness, right? It's really just a moment to moment basis of like thoughts and like perceptions and sensations. That's basically it, right? And like the way you experience it is like at one moment in time you have like a certain experience like of like a thought slash perception, right? Say like I'm experiencing this, or you're not even aware of it, but like you're seeing something, right? And that just happens over and over throughout time. So there's like no entity, but like you don't really get to choose. It seems like what happens, like you don't get to choose what's your next thought. And like when you, so
I think this question seems to revolve not around the choosing so much, but more around the what is you, right?
Yeah. Personally, my opinion is you don't really exist.
Yeah, but Danny, I think therefore I am. It's the first logical proof.
Oh, Descartes is wrong. That's why.
Well, Descartes was definitely wrong later on, but I love Descartes. The guy was totally an atheist and included those extra proofs just to be like, oh yeah, I totally believe in God.
What about like animals? Like if they never think, or they're not, sometimes you can think without being aware that you're thinking, but you can still exist, right?
I don't know. I guess I'll have to think about it a little more.
Even if you do exist, like, what is the part of you that exists? Like you say, I think, therefore I am. Like, are you just the thought itself? Or
potentially, yeah.
Or wouldn't you have to be something that is thinking the thought? But how do you know?
That's true. You can't be the thought. You'd have to be the progenitor of the thought.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing.
Well, in that sense, people do have free will if people are a system of brain cells that create thoughts, correct? So, as defining people as up here, right? Even just that, people have free will.
Who's creating the thoughts? Isn't it just a feedback cycle of like neurons in their brain firing to themselves plus external stimuli that like causally creates new thoughts, basically?
Correct, but you don't need external stimuli. And it's...
Can you have a thought that is not related to external stimuli?
Absolutely, 100%.
Such as?
It should be... I feel like it should be facially true that that is the case. I don't... Why do you think that is not the case?
I feel like
That seems just implicit to me.
all thoughts, like, what is not external to the self?
Have you ever come up with something in your brain and then have made an effect on the world? Like, at this point, we exist so much in the external world that the majority of our thoughts are based off of external stimuli, but it is true that a thinking vacuum could have thoughts, and then when they enter external stimuli, they will take actions based off of the thoughts that they had while they were in the vacuum.
But if they were in the vacuum and didn't know anything outside the vacuum, what would they have thoughts about? The vacuum? Which would be their external stimuli?
They would probably be Descartes lying on his bed thinking, I exist. Why do I exist? Correct? If you
No, they wouldn't, because they wouldn't have like language, right? They would just experience like total darkness or like a void.
But they would experience it. It is observation. I don't know. Just the observation of themselves would create thoughts. Whether it's not like the language question is not a question in my mind.
So do you think like computers and stuff are conscious?
No.
Computers are just really fancy calculators.
Correct. And they can
I
learn
feel
by
like our
playing chess
brains are
against
the-
themselves.
What? I feel like brains are
By
just.
playing chess against themselves.
So sorry, what were you saying?
They can learn by playing chess against themselves.
That's true. I also made a chess AI the other day.
Ooh.
How was it? Can you beat it?
Oh yeah, I can beat it. I use like a pretty simple algorithm, so I'm probably gonna improve it later. But like, when I send it
Beat
to like,
Deep Blue?
huh?
Do you think it would beat Deep Blue?
Definitely not.
That Deep Blue game was nonsense. It was some bullshit.
You're talking about a new game? I don't follow chess.
No,
as
no,
much.
no, no. Deep Blue versus Kasparov, 1994. Yeah. Basically, Kasparov beat Deep Blue once, and they had a second match, and they were like doing pretty even. And as Kasparov was the morning before the game, all of the grandmasters that were working on Deep Blue, which they had a bunch of grandmasters, they decided to load some more openings in. So they essentially just gave Deep Blue like, if Kasparov does this, do this, right? So they gave it like an opening booklet, right? Which is not really an AI, right? Like that's not an AI. And then Kasparov played an opening he was not really familiar with. That was a gambit that they had just loaded into Deep Blue that morning. And so Kasparov lost.
Wow.
Yeah. And they didn't admit it for like 10 years. So. But Kasparov kept like claiming, he kept like saying shit. He was like, yeah, they just grandmasters behind this. I know this is nonsense, right? And everyone was like, yeah, Kasparov, you're just salty, bro. Then 10 years later, they're like, yeah, well, technically, Kasparov might have been right a little bit. So, all right, back to what does it mean to have free will? Oh, what do you think about simulation theory, Danny?
Well, when you talk about simulation theory, right? Are you saying that there's another higher entity that like started simulation? Because I feel like if simulation theory is true, it would just be like perhaps like a spontaneous simulation that started out of the universe or something.
I feel I do not have the brain capacity to fathom what the existence would be like for an entity that could create a simulation on the scale of the universe.
Do you think such an entity exists?
I see no reason why not.
Isn't that like kind of similar to believing in God?
It's a good point.
Mm.
Could be. Believing in God is different, though. Or believing in the Christian God is different.
Because there's a morality attached to it.
No. Kind of, but the reason why I was thinking that's one reason why it's different, but the reason I was thinking of when I said that was concept of faith, right? So this is a Christian belief, which is, remember this one, because this is the key belief in Christianity. You have to have faith in God, correct? But to truly have faith in God, you must believe in God in the absence of reason to do so.
That's
right?
what it means to have faith. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it means to have faith. You cannot logic your way to God.
Whereas in the simulation,
So I'm logicking my way to the simulation. Yeah, no, I'm not.
It makes sense.
So, yeah, that wouldn't go over well with God. God would be like, yeah, no, nice try, bro. That's what he would say.
Nice try. Do you still go to church, by the way, or no?
No, I should. I do not.
Are you? I forget. Are you like what's your relationship with religion?
I do not believe
Like,
it.
you don't actively believe in it, but you think it's like helpful society, right? I think you told me once, but I forgot.
I do not believe in God. I think that organized religion is only as good as the people who organize it. I think that in the past, organized religion has been very bad. I think it also has been very good.
Catholic Church, the #1 charity in the world.
The largest charity in the world. Number one has a slightly different connotation that some people could find offense to, like every other Christian denomination. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. What role do you think like religion will play throughout the rest of your life?
Damn, I was hoping you were gonna ask society. Throughout the rest of my life, I don't know. I think that it would be good to continue to keep religion in the world. I think that I would like to continue studying different religions that I haven't heard of before, because I think religion is a extremely powerful driver of human action, which is something I'm very interested in. And maybe I'll go back to church at some point. I do like listening to the homilies. It's always nice to hear. And the Bible is a very, there's a lot to learn from the Bible. So I don't think people should really dismiss the book, which has influenced more people than any other book in the world, So.
Do you view religion as like mostly in sort of like an intellectual lens, as a way to like understand like the forces affecting the world, or like do you like see it in like a way where it's like a means to like spiritual enlightenment or whatever?
So, in a little bit of a social Darwinist thought process here, I think religion is so successful because it fulfills multiple functions. Are you talking about me personally or in society?
I was talking about you personally, but you can take it however
Okay,
you
well,
want.
I was going to say in society. Give me the question again and I'll answer it for me personally.
Like, did you view like religion more of like, are you interested in religion more through like intellectual way versus like a method of like spiritual growth or whatever?
I am more interested in it intellectually, but in Eastern religions, I am interested in it spiritual growth.
Oh, interesting.
But I'm kind of more interested in it in both. More interested intellectually both. I do find, though, that that there's a lot of good lessons to be learned from religious texts, you know. By nature, they always have nice, tiny lessons. I mean, what's a better lesson than the Good Samaritan? Am I right? People are now referred to as Good Samaritans. Samaritan used to be like a country. So they were like, yeah, this guy was a Samaritan, and people usually hated Samaritans, but this guy was nice. That was the joke. So the Bible it was a little joke back in the day, but now it's kind of lost.
Danny, did you grow up with religion?
Yeah, I guess. I think my mom was like fairly religious, but she did like nothing to like explain to me about religion. So I grew up like knowing nothing, except for a few times where like I would help out with like the custom or whatever. Like sometimes she would like do the thing where like you burn these like special gold papers and supposed to bring like good fortune, and she'll just like hand them to me. I'll just like start burning them. I had no idea why I was doing that.
Do you think someone explained to your mom the purposes of all those things?
I mean, probably. Or, right?
Otherwise, how would she know?
Yeah.
Maybe she doesn't.
What makes you interested in Eastern religions?
I think Buddhism is pretty cool. And
How much have you studied it?
well, Iwei's told me it originated in China, right?
I thought it was India.
India.
I was joking.
India.
The joke is everything originated in China.
Yeah.
But I have not really studied it, no. And I always thought monks were really cool. Isn't it interesting that there are monks in Western religion and in Eastern religion?
Wait, there's monks in Western religion?
Yeah. But they would have like the same thing as like, think like a Tibetan monks, right? Like where they would all live alone and like live into like one little place. Monastery. Yeah, they call them monasteries as well. And just like, you know, chill there and like have all these vows and not talk at all and like do all that. There's the same thing in the West. Like that's like still a thing in Catholicism. They're monks, and they just like do the exact same thing. They're nuns as well.
There was a guy who was sitting in an American airport, and this old man walked up to him, and he seemed to be dressed like a monk. And the guy was at the airport reading a book of Latin poetry, and this monk-looking dude came up to him and spoke to him in Latin and said, "Can you speak Latin?"
Yeah.
And the guy was like, "Yes, how can I help you?" And it turns out that this guy was a Polish monk who only spoke Polish and Latin and had no idea what he was doing, and just somehow happened upon this guy who just knew Latin because he was a history professor or something like that. So
where did
he
you
helped
hear
the
that
Polish
story?
monk out. Social media.
Okay, I remember hearing that stuff. It was funny.
Yeah. So, learn your Latin, kids.
Yeah, it might be useful.
There was also a religious order back in the 1000s, or like around the Crusades times, and so you know how to go to heaven, right?
Be good.
Be good, have a short life, right? Like you don't want to commit too many sins. There's this religious order that would go around beating travelers with sticks, because this is how they viewed the Bible, in a hopes that the travelers would then kill them, because if you commit suicide, you don't go to heaven. So they would like try to commit suicide by a traveler. Yeah, it was a pretty. Needless to say, it did not last very long because they died out. But yeah, that was a thing for a while. The Pope was concerned. I think the Pope put out like a papal bull and was like, "Stop! Don't do this. This is not the way to heaven." Religion is cool, man. It motivates people to do crazy things.
That's nice.
What?
Sounds like a rice cooker.
No, I think it's the air fryer.
Mm-hmm. Have you eaten anything interesting recently?
Was that eating, like food-wise? Early in the week, I went to like a Szechuan cuisine restaurant. And I had the mala soup. It's pretty good.
Have you had anything that's mala?
I have no idea.
I feel like you might not have. You should
Makes
try
sense.
it. It's spicy, but in a really weird way, right? It's like a numbing spicy.
It's spicy, but I really like it.
Did I tell you that I made the spicy version of the rice curry? Danny?
Well,
Yeah, it was good. It turned out much better the second time. I used a little less water, so.
yeah.
Also, yesterday we went to a Cantonese dim sum, or essentially yum cha place, where they don't give you a menu and they push around all of the food in little carts. And when the cart comes by your table, you tell the lady what you want and she gives it to you. Yeah.
Did you practice your Chinese? Or?
I did. I was doing well. Well, I would say, can I have a sugar? Because I wouldn't remember what the name was. And I was doing well until I had to ask for the check, and the waiter came over and he was like this older Chinese guy. And I was like, can we have the check? Because I couldn't remember how to say maitan. And he didn't understand me, so I tried to say it in Chinese, but I got up to mai, and then I didn't know what to say, and he was like, maitan. And I was like, yes, maitan. Yeah, so he did okay.
I think he didn't understand you because you were talking quietly.
Oh. At first he said check, and the first word that popped in my mind was like, 支票, but I feel like it just means like check. But I don't know if you would say check in Chinese if you're gonna, like, not like a physical check, but like ask for the check.
Yeah.
We could also just say like,
Bill.
like someone to pay or whatever, I
People
guess.
say bill here. I say bill. I think
People
I
say
once
bill?
Really? I once asked someone, "Can I please have the bill?" And they were like, "What?"
I think
You have
that's
to say
because you
check.
talk quietly. Or you're talking through your mask and you also have an accent.
Maybe. I did once
All
say,
these
"Can I
things
please have
combined.
the check?" in Australia, and they didn't get it. And when I said bill, they understood me.
No, people say bill here too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll start saying bill instead of check.
You can say check also, either way.
Bill makes more sense to me. Because it's a
Yeah,
bill.
no, 100% does.
So why do people say check?
I don't know. It's confusing.
Anyway, the yum cha was good.
So, do you want to hear about history?
Okay, what are we hearing about today?
What are we hearing about today?
Let's do...
Can be a period of time, can be a country, whatever you want.
Let's do Mongolia.
Time limit?
Shall we be nice and give you like a minute?
No, I do Mongolia.
Okay.
Yeah.
4 minutes and 2 seconds.
All right.
Ready when you are.
So, Mongolia. We can really talk about two things here because I think there are two interesting Mongolia facts. First, Mongolia conquered the world. Right? 1% of the world is descended from Genghis Khan. And the guy, conquered a crap ton of stuff. His children conquered a crap ton of stuff, but he is a good lesson. It is a good lesson in how empires do not seem to last. It was just too big, too hard to manage. Regional powers started competing with one another, and because they could not present a unified front, eventually collapsed. A lot of really cool things, though, in Mongolia. A lot of great typhoons stopping them from conquering Japan. Total happenstance, pretty fun stuff.
Typhoons in Mongolia?
No, in Japan.
Oh, okay.
The Mongolians, Kublai Khan tried to conquer Japan twice, and it failed both times because of typhoons. Kublai Khan was pretty cool because he was like, yeah, I'm gonna just become Chinese or try to, and that worked for a while. What was that dynasty? The Yuan dynasty or something?
It might have been.
Yeah, it was the last one, right? I think they lasted the whole time.
No, the Qing dynasty was the last one. They were Manchurian.
How did they get rid of... How did they overthrow the Yuan?
I don't know my Chinese dynastic timeline.
I want to learn more about Chinese dynastic timeline. Alright, the second most interesting thing about Mongolia is that... that's very cool. The second most interesting thing about Mongolia is that at one point... it almost joined the United Soviet Socialist Republics. And they, I believe, asked Russia to ask the USSR to annex Mongolia because of debt reasons. Could be totally wrong on this. This is kind of what I remember. I'm not sure if I'm right. And the USSR said no. Because, anyone want to guess, why would the USSR not want to add another Soviet Socialist Republic to its...
Because China was thinking about it?
Very close. China would have been salty. So, and at that point, China was communist, the USSR was communist.
They wanted to be communist
Everyone was like,
buddies.
yeah, we'll be communist buddies. And Mongolia was communist too, so they were a buddy as well. So they're like, yeah, we'll leave Mongolia. There's not much we really want there. China seems to think Mongolia is chill. And so Mongolia remained independent despite only having two neighbors, and those two neighbors being the two largest communist countries on the planet by population and by landmass. So pretty interesting stuff. Also, a guy in my class is from Mongolia. In my Russian class was from Mongolia. And he, I think his parents were political dissidents.
Oh.
Yeah, from Mongolia. And they had to flee the country.
Interesting.
Yeah, because we were talking about it once and he was like, yeah, they're in political exile or something. So, in the US. Pretty crazy, right?
That is pretty crazy.
The guy's really cool too. He's a nice guy. His name was T. We were good buddies in Russian class. That's all I got.
20 seconds remaining. Danny, you have any questions?
No, I liked it. It was pretty good.
What's the deal with Inner Mongolia?
Talk about the part in China? Jeez. I don't have any historical facts I know about Inner Mongolia. I do know...
Saved by the Bell.
No, I know something about Inner Mongolia. There was some...
Did it at one point belong to Mongolia?
Yeah, I'm sure. It makes sense to me. There was a large resettlement and an attempt to make Inner Mongolia agriculturally productive during the Cultural Revolution. They chopped up lots of trees and it failed terrifically. Millions of people died from starvation. Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Fun times.
Yeah, it used to be primarily nomadic. It was the classic classic communist thing where primarily nomadic people lives and they herd stuff. Soviets move in and are like, well, it worked in the Great Plains of the U.S., so let's turn it all into farmland. And it did not work there because a lot of people died there too with the dust storms. And they tried to turn it into farmlands and it just totally failed. So, did the same thing in Kazakhstan. Alright, that's the end of the history lesson.
Exoplanet. Question
So
mark?
I don't have a single exoplanet, but I have a tidbit of information about a population of exoplanets. So do you remember how I told you guys about the first exoplanet that was ever discovered, Pegasi 51b, and it's a hot Jupiter orbiting very close to its host star? So in the early days of exoplanet searches, a lot of planets that showed up were these hot Jupiters because they were easiest to find. But they have now discovered that hot Jupiters are actually a transient phenomena, and they don't last. So over time, the star will essentially eat the atmosphere of a hot Jupiter, and the hot Jupiter will disappear.
Wait, so is Pegasus 159b still?
I think it's in the process of being eaten.
It takes like 1,000 or...
It takes a while.
But like, what are we talking a while? Are we talking like a million years or like 100,000 years? Because 100,000 years, that's fast. Probably talking a couple million.
Yeah, I feel like an order of a million would make more sense.
You want to pass me a Gatorade?
Yeah. But yeah, so the largest population... Actually, I feel like I said this last time. The largest population they believe to exist now are Neptune-sized planets. Although there is this weird population gap in between planets of a couple of Earth masses and these small Neptunes. And they're not really sure why there aren't really planets in that range of mass sizes. So they're currently trying to figure that out.
Wait, between... Say it again?
So they found planets that I think are a couple of Earth masses. And then they found planets that are like Neptune-ish mass. But I think there's
nothing in between.
Yeah, there's like not much in between. So
really
we don't know why
confusing.
that's the case. It could just be that current detection methods aren't sensitive enough to those kinds of planets which may be further out in solar systems. But yeah. Very mysterious. Planet populations. Super interesting.
I like planets.
Yeah. Also, stars with planets around them have a different chemical composition than stars that do not have planets around them. So there's a theory that the higher the metallicity of a star, the more likely it is to have planets, which kind of makes sense because planets form out of the sort of like dusty disk around a star, and if a star forms with heavier metals in it, and in astronomy anything heavier than helium is considered a metal. So there's that.
Yeah.
There's more metal in the star's sort of baby disk to create a planet.
Damn, carbon. Pretty heavy.
Yeah. That was the exoplanet tidbit of today.
That's very cool.
Cool.
Gotta start looking out for some planets that have some metallicity.
Mm.
You know, I never learned until college that Neptune and Uranus are ice.
Yeah.
I always thought they were gas giants. But they're
The ice giants.
That's really cool. Do you think if an alien civilization were to look at our solar system, would they realize that there was how many planets do you think they would see? They'd only see Jupiter?
Yeah, they might only find Jupiter, honestly, if they were looking with our current level of technology. Because also Jupiter is really far out. So they might not even see anything
Jupiter
at all.
They wouldn't see any of our smaller planets?
Because the planets that they found have super short orbital periods. Like those hot Jupiters in the early days would have orbital periods on the order of days.
Yeah, and even all the small planets we found have really short orbital periods.
There's a resonant system that they found with, I believe, 6 planets. And
I know this is on.
No, it's not TRAPPIST. It's
not TRAPPIST?
It's a different one. But all 6 of those planets have orbits that would fit inside the orbit of Mercury. Isn't that pretty crazy?
Wow.
Yeah. So they're super close.
I thought TRAPPIST was really... They're all tidally locked. Like, 6 or...
I feel like TRAPPIST... Maybe it is different.
I know a bit about the TRAPPIST system.
I know that a couple of them are in the habitable zone.
Yes, they are. But they're also tidally locked.
Yeah.
So...
I guess
TRAPPIST...
it's a very dim star.
TRAPPIST D... E... F and G are all in the habitable zone. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I know my TRAPPIST system. And I believe there's also an H. But that is not in the habitable zone. and there's an A. Well, then there's a B and a C.
Mm-hmm.
They're also not in apples.
Planets are really cool.
Yeah. So you've given your book recommendation. I've given my book recommendation.
What was your book? Oh, I just finished reading Carmilla, which is by somebody Le Fanu, who is an Irish writer. But Carmilla was sort of the first literary vampire story and was said to have inspired Dracula, and it's about a female vampire called Camilla. And it's pretty good. I would recommend. I was in a writing workshop last semester where there was a girl who was in a literary theory or analysis. I think it was like she was in some kind of Gothic literature class, and in that class she read an article about how vampirism, especially Carmilla, may have been a metaphor for women with eating disorders.
Well, it's certainly an eating disorder. That is true.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. What about you, Ian? Do you have a book to recommend?
My book is the War That Ended Peace, and it is about the origins of World War One. And one of the things, since you've brought it up, since both of you brought it up now, that I find very interesting is the author doesn't treat it in a way that and this is similar to the way Benjamin Nathans, who's my favorite history professor, talks sometimes. She doesn't treat it in such a way that she's like, what caused World War One? Why did World War One happen? Like, all of these long-term factors led to World War One, and World War One was inevitable. Instead, she looked at why the peace broke, so to speak, right? Because at that point, Europe had been in a massive 100-year span of peace, and there were very powerful vested interests invested in that peace, spending millions and millions and millions of dollars on all sides on that peace. Many great leaders were also all in favor of peace. And I think one of the ways she's looking at it is instead of like, why was war inevitable, she's looking at why did the status quo break down? Like, why did the peace fail? Which I think is really cool.
Right.
So I'm looking forward to seeing it. And she also has a book called Paris 1919, which is about the Treaty of Versailles. Do you know the Treaty of Versailles, Danny?
That's what they wrote at the end of the war, right?
Yes. And common conception holds that it is, like, because of, like, its harshness towards Germany, it led to World War II, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she in that book, I think she's going to posit that is not the case. So I'm curious about that.
Yeah.
So those are my books.
Yeah. And my book, again, is Kokoro by Natsume Soseki. It's like published in, I think, 1914. So that sounds like the start of the war.
Sounds like we're reading books at the same time.
Yeah. And it's basically about some guy, like a young person who like grows up and is going to like university, right? And then he just like meets this person who he calls sensei, just like some stranger, right? And he starts like following around and like becoming friends with him, right? And like he kind of like looks up to him for like all his like unconventional, like ideas about the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then he also like realized that like his life's kind of like a mystery because like he seems to have like no occupation and just like get by in life doing absolutely nothing, right? Yeah. So that's and then eventually we find out some stuff at the end.
I'm curious now.
Mm.
Good book?
Yeah, it mainly talks about like or it mainly deals with like introspection and like loneliness and stuff like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Good themes for a book.
Such as reading.
Such as life.
All right. Is that?
Yeah, on that happy note, are we ending? Yeah, okay. We'll be back at it next week, correct?
Yeah.
At 8 p.m.
So, millions of followers.
Yeah. Did you set up a standard? Did you put on the Twitch that we have a recurring thing, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, nice. Cool. Well, we'll see you guys next week then.
All right. Bye.